Shall we start? Welcome everyone. We'll start the webinar in next 5 minutes.
Have you started, Dr. Gunjan?
So we'll start at 11:05. So
11:05, okay.
Yeah.
How many people are there right now?
24. $30. Good morning, everyone. On behalf of the George Institute for Global Health India, we welcome you to today's discussion on endometriosis, a chronic disease that is silently affecting lives of an estimated 30 million Indian women. We are excited to host this event for many reasons. Firstly, to share knowledge on endometriosis, which is an invisible and neglected disease. Secondly, to discuss the social, public health, and economic implications of endometriosis and how it impacts the lives of women living with this disease. And thirdly, to identify key gaps and what needs to be done to address them. To deep dive and shed light on different aspects of this disease, today we have brought together an esteemed panel of researchers, clinicians, and women living with endometriosis. So without further delay, let me introduce you to our panelists. Our first panelist is Dr. Aruna Nigam, who is a professor and unit head at Hamdard Institute of Medical Sciences, New Delhi. She established the endoscopy unit in the institute. She has over 200 publications in various national and international journals and serves as chief editor of the Pan Asia Journal of Obstetrics and Gynecology. Dr. Nigam is also an executive editor of Indian Journal of Medical Specialists and editor of the ISCCP newsletter. Professor Nigam started an educational website, the link is here, in 2020 for students and practitioners in the field and has delivered more than 150 lectures that are currently available on her website. Our second panelist is Dr. Pramathesh Das Mahapatra. Dr. Das Mahapatra is a laparoscopic surgeon with over 45 years of experience in clinical practice and research in endometriosis. He has conducted many live workshops on endometriosis, surgery followed by CME's National and International Congress on Treatment and Management of Endometriosis. Dr. Das Mahapatra is a founder secretary general of Endometriosis Society India and also serves as a vice president at the Indian Endoscopy Society. Dr. Das Mahapatra has established a global platform, endosopindia.org, to pull resources and intelligence to prioritize the management and prevention of endometriosis. Our third panelist is Ms. Prachi Katuria. Ms. Katuria is Deputy Director at Hriday, coordinating the Healthy India Alliance, also known as India NCD Alliance, and the India Network for NCDs and Youth, to which Hriday serves as the secretary. Ms. Katuria has been working towards ensuring meaningful involvement of youth and people living with NCDs as important stakeholders in policy-related discussions and grassroots level implementations of NCD programs at the national and subnational levels. Endometriosis is a living condition for her, and today she will share her experience with us. Our fourth panelist is Dr. Rahul Gajbhye. Dr. Gajbhye is a clinician scientist with Indian Council of Medical Research, currently heading several national projects, including the Endometriosis Clinical and Genetic Research in India, also known as ECGRI study. The details are in ecgri.in website. And pregnancy outcomes in Indian women with endometriosis and biomarker correlation. He's a mentor to medical colleges and public and private healthcare systems for research on endometriosis, COVID-19, male infertility, and snakebite. Dr. Gajbhye is an international ambassador of the World Endometriosis Society. He has published over 70 research articles, book chapters, technical documents, and policy papers, and have received several national and international fellowships. Our final panelist is Ms. Soman Ramana. Ms. Ramana has over 21 years of work experience in sales and operations in her work with various international skin brands. She conducts a wide variety of training programs, induction programs, workshops, and other events. Ms. Ramana's interest also extend to teaching, traveling, and painting as well. She will share with us her experience of living with endometriosis. So this is our panel. And now, but before starting the discussion, we would like to thank our audience of academicians, researchers, practitioners, and students for joining us. We encourage you to ask questions in the chat box and we'll take them during the discussion. If your question is directed to a particular panelist, please mention the name with your questions in the chat box. Thanks. And moderators for this panel are Dr. J.K. Lakshmi and myself, Preeti Rajvanshi. We are the senior research fellows with the George Institute for Global Health and work extensively in areas of women's health and healthier societies. We welcome you all. So we'll start the discussion by hearing from Professor Nigam about endometriosis. Professor Nigam, if you could tell us what is endometriosis, what are the common sites of endometriosis, and what are the signs and symptoms?
Thank you, Preeti, and thank you, Lakshmi, both of you for inviting me for this panel discussion. As we all know, and as you have elaborated very nicely, that the endometriosis is a debilitating disease. And actually, it is an invasive disease. Invasive, we call it for the carcinoma, but it is one of the disease with which women live throughout her reproductive age group because she has to conceive, she has to bring up her child. Otherwise, it is an invasive disease, and really the life of the patient, you can see whenever she enters in your OPD. So these three pictures I have put in specifically to show you that ultrasound, you can see the big masses on it, although it affects mainly the pelvic organs, that is the uterus, tubes, ovaries, pelvic peritoneum. But it can affect any other organ. May it be a bowel, maybe it a liver, maybe a lung or a skin, as you can see here in the middle picture. Can you change the slide, please? So what is endometriosis? Endometrium is a inner lining of the uterus. Okay. So whenever this inner lining is implanted outside the uterus, then it becomes a condition called as endometriosis. It can be implanted in the uterus, then it is called as endometriosis interna or adenomyosis. And when it is implanted totally outside the uterus, say it ovary or pouch of Douglas or in the intestine, then it is called as endometriosis. Although it is a benign condition, but it invades the organs, and it is seen in as high as 5 to 21% of the females of reproductive age group. This reproductive age group spans from the 15 to 45 years usually. And if you see two diseases, that is infertility and severe dysmenorrhea. Dysmenorrhea, that means the patient is having a pain during menses. So if it is a severe pain, starts before menses, persisting after menses, then it is a severe dysmenorrhea, which is causing a loss of activity in a patient. Then you can find it in as high as 50% of the patient. That means if you are seeing severe dysmenorrhea cases, 10, then 5 will be having a endometriosis. This much high is the incidence. And you see, routinely patient is having a 3 work loss days in a general population. But when there is an endometriosis, this work loss days can extend from as high as 10, 15, 25 days. So this is the incidence of this disease, and one should be very careful when we are diagnosing this disease. Can you change the slide? Yeah. So now the patient, how the patient presents with this disease. So it can be a dysmenorrhea we have just talked of, or it can be a chronic abdominal pain. Now we should not be confusing routine abdominal pain, that is an intestinal pain, with the endometriosis. So typically it has a different features, chronic pelvic pain, or some patient presents with a premenstrual spotting whenever there is a pelvic endometriosis. Now I told you that besides pelvic area, it can affect the other sites also. So another important problem with which the patient present is an infertility, that is inability to conceive, because what it causes a distortion of the relationship between the tubes and the ovaries. This endometrial tissue can implant in the gastrointestinal, that is an intestinal system, digestive system. So when it implants over that, it can cause constipation, blood in stool, diarrhea, tenesmus. When it implants in the bladder, then it causes flank pain, back pain, chronic pelvic pain. Patient wants to micturate again and again, that is urgency, increased frequency of micturation, and blood in the urine. So this can be there with whenever it is implanted in the bladder. Then it can implant anywhere. You name the organ and it can be implanted anywhere. So very rarely it has been found in the lungs also, in the livers also. But the most common site is the pelvic. And in pelvic, there is a tubes, ovaries, and the pouch of Douglas, and intestinal symptoms very commonly we get. I think this was about the clinical feature. Rest of the things we can discuss in as the panel discussion moves. So another very important thing which is there is the psychological health. We people, majority of the clinicians or the family persons are dealing with the disease, but we don't have to deal with the disease. We have to deal with the patient, because once the patient is chronically debilitating, she's not able to walk, her work loss days. So this affects the mental status of the female. And that is the most psychological health that is most debilitating in this female. If she is not able to conceive, then yes, there is a psychological problem, lot of family pressure, but still she is suffering the pain, suffering, not able to conceive, and the pressure from the society and the family that has to be taken care of whenever we are seeing this patient, right? So rest of the things we can deal further with the panel discussion.
Thank you, Professor Nigam, for this very helpful orientation that launches our discussion on endometriosis. It's a condition that our panelists and some of the audience are acquainted with or even expert in, some painfully so, but many might not have been familiar with this condition before this orientation that you gave us. Note to the viewers again, please feel free to send in questions and comments at any time in the chat box, beginning now. We will attempt to bring your remarks into the discussion as it unfolds, and to address any remaining questions towards the end. While our effort will be to include all the questions that come in, we thank you in advance for your understanding if we are unable to air your questions in today's discussion. However, all is not lost, or your questions will not go unanswered for long. We will actually collect all the questions that have not been addressed in today's discussion and answer them and send them to you on email. So I hope you've registered, and if you've registered, you will receive the answers on email. So to proceed with our discussion, Dr. Nigam did give us a very clear and in fact, a disturbing picture of endometriosis, and talked about the wide variety of symptoms. And we realized that those symptoms are not all specific to endometriosis. So you spoke a little bit about differential diagnosis, and these symptoms could quite easily give the picture of several other disease conditions at first. So please tell us, this question is directed to the clinicians in the panel. How do you narrow the diagnosis down, and what do you particularly ask and advise patients to watch for?
I think you have not taken the name of the person. Whom do you want to answer?
Okay. Yeah, so I meant to ask you, and I also want to ask Dr. Das Mahapatra, since both of you are the people who are most in touch with women who approach you for the identification of disease. So what do you look for? What are the symptoms that raise flags in your mind?
Okay, I take the question. You see, the diagnosis of endometriosis depends on many things. First of all, the history. History is very, 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 very important. You have to spend at least half an hour to 45 minutes with the patient and to know everything about the woman's menstrual history. First of all, when did she have her first period? Was it associated with pain? Patient says pain, pain, pain everywhere. There is not a person to believe. Because at the young age, she's going to school, and because of the pain, she doesn't want to go to school because of the pain and the embarrassment she would receive from the friends and the teachers. She would say, I'm not going to the school. And the parents think she doesn't want to go to school for some other reason. So she is being misunderstood. So you have to spend time, the pain, and the typical features of pain, it starts before the period, stays during the period, and sometimes stays after the period. We call it pain before, during, and after the period. Then the question is, we have to take the full history of the family, because it also runs in family. We have to ask her whether anybody in the family had the similar features of pain during period. That is very important. And then, of course, the other features of symptoms is very important, that whether she is having, painful defecation or passing urine, she gets pain, or there is some other pain, abdomen, vague pain. The problem of symptoms is that it is not specific to endometriosis. So we get, wrong diagnosis sometimes. The other problem is that the pain can be for anything else, for bowel problem. some young, highly strong women get pain due to the bowel problem, which is not related to endometriosis. So we get wrong diagnosis. So apart from the clinical features, then we get the examination. The examination needs to be done during the phase of period. That is another point. If the patient is not married or sexually inactive, then we get a problem of examining her inside the vagina. However, we can bypass that by examining through the rectum, to the back passage. But in my experience, I find it is very difficult to do a back passage examination because that is also too painful for the patient without the disease. Now then we go for the diagnosis through the investigations. The commonest investigation, we advise two things. One is the blood test, which is not specific, called CA-125, because CA-125 can be raised for any other diseases in the pelvis or outside the pelvis, but it is not specific to endometriosis. However, if you know a patient who had endometriosis and CA-125 was high, and as a follow-up treatment, we can measure the CA-125 to know whether disease is under control or not. So it gives you an idea whether your treatment is the right path or not. The other investigation we suggest is the ultrasonography, which is now available everywhere in India. The problem is, it all depends on the sonologist. Any sonologist can diagnose an ovarian endometrioma or a cyst in the ovary, but not the peritoneal endometriosis, which is very difficult to diagnose by ultrasonography. The other investigation procedures like MRI, these are very sophisticated and expensive modalities. However, we do advise sometimes when we are confused about the diagnosis or before the surgery. The other is very, very important is the laparoscopy. Now, there's a lot of questions about doing laparoscopy. Laparoscopy needs a patient to be put into sleep, general anesthesia. We call it as a mini invasive procedure. However, we have compared the two groups, one who had diagnosis by laparoscopy and one with by clinical symptoms. Clinical symptoms always give a late diagnosis. The average delay of diagnosis is usually 10 years plus. Whereas, if you do a laparoscopy, your diagnosis is not delayed. You can get a quick diagnosis and you can brand the lady with a confirmed diagnosis, and you know you can plan for the future management. That is very important. If the patient is having endometriosis, you know she is going to live with the disease for the rest of her life. So we need to know why the pain is there, why the endometriosis, and how it should be best treated unless you see through the laparoscope. But because laparoscopy used to be a very invasive procedure with its complication and morbidity, there are people who are saying it is expensive, patient needs to have general anesthesia, better to avoid this and go for clinical diagnosis. But I always say that women or young girls coming to my clinic with the mother is too much worried, I tell them, I suggest that we should have a laparoscopy, because young girls, you cannot examine properly. The gynecological examination needs a proper examination before we make a clinical diagnosis with certainty. But here, for young girls, we cannot do a proper clinical examination. So only way left is the laparoscopy. Ultrasonography, yes, you can do that for endometrioma, but not other places.
Thank you, Dr. Das Mahapatra. That's been very informative. So we gather that from your statements, you have mentioned the delay anyway, but you also said that you need to take an extensive personal and family history. And there are all these tests of different kinds. So clearly there is a delay in diagnosis, and we expect that before the delay in diagnosis, there's a delay in the patients coming to a practitioner at all. So what are the typical trajectories of women with endometriosis in seeking and receiving healthcare? When do they seek a consultation? Do they suffer for years before they bring it out, acknowledge it to themselves, to their families, and then reach a healthcare provider? And do they need to consult several providers in order to actually arrive at the diagnosis and then begin treatment?
For me, okay, the painful period which disappears by taking one painkiller tablet doesn't bother. We are not bothered about that. But if the patient is getting pain relief with one tablet today, and after 3 months he needs 2 tablets, then after 3 months he takes 4 tablets, and after 6 months he says, I am not getting any relief with that painkiller. That means the painkiller used to work in the initial stage, but doesn't work later on. That you must be suspecting endometriosis. That is very important. The other thing is that frequency of pain. If the pain used to be, we call it a progressive pain. If the pain was much less before, and then is gradually increasing in duration and in intensity, then you must suspect endometriosis. And the other thing is that you should always remember, as I have written there, the grandmother's guidance. Because in our family members, although today we are not living in a family, but if you have someone, a very senior person in the family, oh, painful period is a very common thing. That is penalty you pay as being a woman. So you have to bear the pain. And I used to get, grandmother would say, I used to get pain. I got married, I got a child, your father, and the pain disappeared. And your mother also had a pain. She got married and she got you and pain disappeared. That story, unfortunately, does not hold good now because the weather, the pollution system, the stress factor, everything has changed. Painful periods should be taken as seriously if, as I said, painkiller is not working and if it is the pain is progressive. That is the point. They should come to a doctor. And it should not be the other. I should warn all the gynecologists. Nowadays, PCO is a very common thing. And the sonologists say it's a PCO, multicystic ovaries. Don't be carried away. PCOs never give painful period. If there's an associated pain, you should always suspect endometriosis. You must treat the patient as endometriosis. These are the 2 important information I want to pass over to all of you and to the people who are listening to us.
Thank you. We will now ask Prachi and Sonam what their experiences have been of identifying endometriosis. So your experiences of the patterns of symptom, seeking and receiving treatment, and also tell us about the effect of the diagnosis of endometriosis. The first time you heard that what you have is endometriosis, how did it feel? And how have you felt interacting with healthcare providers throughout this process? I can see Prachi on the screen. So Prachi, please go first.
Thank you, JK. And I can't thank you all enough for having this conversation today because I haven't had or been a part of such a comforting conversation about endometriosis because every time I have visited a health facility or a doctor, it has been a very painful process and an experience, I would say. And Dr. Das Mahapatra was saying just the things that I have been through from the point where my menstrual cycle has been very, very painful with at least 2 to 3 tablets being taken. And at times I had to even get an IV to get the pain relieved. And at the very beginning, when I was very young in college, I am from a small town. Now I have relocated to Delhi. But when I was in the small town, the doctors always used to say that it's something that will go away once you get married. Don't worry about it. And my mother also heard that. So it's so unfortunate that I had to wait to see if marriage was the solution. But unfortunately, that wasn't, of course, because there was a condition that was there and nobody recognized it. And I even remember that the pain was so much and the stress that parents go through, even they don't want to give any medication to their child because they feel it might affect their reproductive processes in some way. So the only thing was to have a water bag and just lie on the bed for 2-3 days and bear the pain, not go to college, study, years because the pain was unbearable and there was nothing to relieve the pain. I think my diagnosis has happened really, really late in life. I would say it has just happened about 3-4 years ago, when it was a time that I was planning and I was thinking that I should go for family planning. Probably it's the right time now. Let's just try and get our basic tests done and see how we are performing, because of course the cycle was very, very painful and it still is. And that was the time I visited a gynecologist here in Delhi, and it was of course a private hospital. And I had such a bad experience. It was traumatizing actually, because the only thing that they told me was, and of course internal scans were done, and they said that you have endometriosis, there are multiple cysts, and you have 1 or 2 fibroids also playing around. And the only solution that they offered was that you should just quickly go ahead and plan. And there's nothing invasive that we want to do on you, because it is your reproductive phase, and we don't want to operate you right now. But just go ahead and plan a baby and everything will be fine. Don't delay it any further. And again, that wasn't something that I was expecting. Every time giving me a solution, that in itself is a big issue or a big task. Marriage is a big task. Planning a baby is a big task. And you are going through a health challenge. That's not a solution, right? I'll just share an incident here. What happened was that I had to undergo an internal scanning and everything. And this was my first time. It's a painful process, right? And anyone who's gone through it will agree that you're so fearful of what is going to come out, that the scan was done and the doctor was talking to me, telling me that you have this much of a fibroid here and this much of a fibroid here. There are 2-3 cysts and the endometrial tissue is growing here. And then I came out, and it was a follicle monitoring cycle kind of a thing that I was following. And the first time, and I was so relieved that the test got over, and now I don't have to get through this at least for the next 10-12 days. I come out of it, and I'm in the parking lot taking out my car, and the doctor's office calls me and says, "You'll have to come back. We haven't taken a particular reading." And I was so much in shock that I'll have to go through that whole process again. I don't want to enter that room. It was so fearful. And I went there, and the doctor said that you had so many things. There was cysts that I was talking about. There was fibroid. There was endometriosis. That I got confused that I had to even measure the size of your follicle. I haven't taken that, but since there was so much already, and she was talking about it to me and telling me that this was happening, she said it was an overwhelming experience for me as well. And that was the time I realized there was seriously some problem happening, and I need to take care of it, because so many things. At the end of it, I don't have a solution. As a person living with, of course, now that I'm working in the area of NCD prevention and control, and I have access to professionals who can guide me, I think for a common person, when I was younger, I would say, it wasn't a good experience. And what Dr. Das Mahapatra was saying, and his consultation to the patients who visit him, if somebody would have told me those things early on in life, probably my situation would have been better. And I can very, very unfortunately, I can say that fear that infested into me throughout this journey has not allowed me to go even for a surgery or take a surgical process. I haven't had the courage to go for it. I'm still living with the pain. I'm still living with endometriosis, cysts and fibroids, everything there. There's a big fibroid that I can start feeling coming up on the surface as well. But it just frightens me a lot to go and visit. Probably that is because the empathy that I would have wanted to come from the professionals that I was interacting with hasn't really given me that confidence. And I hope, and I don't think there is a solution to it. I will eventually have to go for probably a surgery, because nothing else, but it is just managing your own condition. Something that has happened to me recently is that my cycle, which used to be for 5 days, now has gone up to say 7 days. And it is really, not a good feeling every month when you have to see changes happening in your body and you still can't gather the courage to go and get, say, corrective surgeries done. So I'll just stop here. Sorry, it's just so much of experience and pain that comes with this condition.
Yeah, Prachi, I'm so sorry to hear from your story. But I think as clinicians, we should not advise women to get a pregnancy or to get married as a treatment of endometriosis. We should give enough time to discuss with them. We don't want to be a friendly situation, but we have to create an environment so that you get confidence on the doctor. You rightly pointed out that we counsel the patient in such a way that we scare the patients. Patients goes home with a very fearful mind. We do not want that. We have to be with the patient. I tell my patient, look, you got a disease. Unfortunately, there is no permanent cure of the disease. But your mother or father probably having high blood pressure or diabetes, that is also not curable. But we can keep the diseases under control. We can help you. There are many modalities of treatment available. So we will pick and choose the one best for you. Whether you are married or you are trying for a pregnancy or not trying for a pregnancy, or you do not want to be a mother at all, that's fine. But we have to pick and choose a treatment protocol for yourself. That kind of attitude should come from the doctors. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, both Prachi and Dr. Das Mahapatra. It's a sort of sweet sadness that I feel thinking about the empathy that is there between the clinician and the patient, but it removes from each other. I want to ask Sonam to shed some light on her experiences of diagnosis and initial interactions with practitioners. Sonam, please. Sonam, you are muted.
Hello, hi everyone. This is Sonam, and I want to share my experience of endometriosis. When my first period started at the age of I don't remember my age. I was in class 6, and then it never happened. And then it happened. Then we went to homeopathic doctor, and then it started from 8th standard again. And then I used to have a very painful periods, and later on then I was in college and I started working, and I was facing this problem, and it was irregular cycle. Sometimes it used to come, sometimes it never used to come. It was like that. And later on it got diagnosed in year 2015. So when Dr. Rolly Gautam from Holy Family, she said you have this problem, and I think if you're 35, so you should just get it removed. So my mother said, no, she's not married. So we do not want to get it removed, so let her get married. So then she has put me on progesterone tablets, and eventually it deteriorated my condition day by day. And when I used to have periods, my cycle used to come after 21 days. And from that time, it was a lot of problem for my family also. We all had to go through a lot of the pain used to be unbearable. I used to jump from the bed. It used to be for hours and hours, and then I used to again to Holy Family Hospital, and then they used to inject me. Friend of my family that if anything happened, that we will be to have pain, and then again they used to admit me. So problematic for my family all throughout. Then doctor had put me on. She was trying to find out a solution. What would for not get my period. So when I was expecting my periods, I had a painful pain. The pain was so unbearable in 2016. So they asked me, and it was, and the periods were not getting stopped. It was then they have given me injection of to stop the bleeding. But that tablet, what do you call? It's a I don't remember. Trapic, yes, Trapic. I used to. Trapic. I used to have Trapic. I think it's a sachet. It's a that it's for 10 tablets. So I used to have multiple tablets, four tablets or 6 tablets in a day. And then eventually what happened that my periods didn't stop. So then doctor said, let's do an ultrasound. And then when they were suspecting that it could be cancer also. Then I went to JP Hospital. So then from there, I got all the tests done. and of cancer test and all. And then they did my this biopsy. Then it was endometriosis with adenomyosis. And when this was diagnosed in 2015 by Dr. Rolly Gautam, I was not aware. I was not able to even pronounce this properly because what was it? I was not aware. Because for me, it was just a pain, but it could be such a big problem. I was not aware. And then for I think in till 2016, I had those tablets, and later on, my period cycle was regular. I think it is more because of the stress it happened, and I was born with it, and I had a bulky uterus. It could be because of that. And my mother also used to have pain when she was very young, but she got married very early. So, and her uterus was never removed. So I think it's genetic also. I don't know what was the problem because I've been told that this is the problem. And then in 2018, no, in 2021, again I had this problem, and the bleeding was not getting stopped. So my hemoglobin was 12 in the month of February 2021, and then later on, I have done the online consultation from, there was another doctor, so not from Holy Family but from somewhere else. So she has put me on Crisanta medicine, and what has happened because of that medicine, I don't know it is because of the medicine or what was it, because it never happened with me. From 12, my hemoglobin has come to 6. And then I rushed to another doctor in Hoskas, Dolly Maria. And then she has put me, she didn't ask me to go for ultrasound. She has asked me to do different tests and all. So after that, she has put me on Novolon tablet. She asked me to eat for like 84 days and some other multivitamins. And after that, when I was expecting my periods on, I think before, prior to my 86th day, I had a one spot, and I called doctor, and she said like, it could be because you are expecting your periods. And then I used to feel very bloated and heavy. And when I used to practice yoga, I was feeling that, there is something just above below my navel point. There is something which is very, so, but I was ignoring it. In between, during that 80 period of 86 days, I got my test done. Then again, my hemoglobin has reduced from 6 to it has come to 5.5. Then again, doctor asked me to have these iron injections. After that, also my condition, I used to have, I used to feel very low. I used to feel very weak at the same time. Then on 31st of August, I had a unbearable pain, and I consulted Dr. Dr. Maria. She said go to a nearby hospital. They will they will inject you and they will give you some tablets and all. My condition was too bad. Later on, we thought of going to Holy Family again, but my one of my relative, she was friends with Dr. Anita. So she had taken me on that night. She had taken me to Sitaram Bhartiya Hospital, and that's how my this. Then they decided that we should go for an ultrasound. In ultrasound, this my uterus is increasing in size like a 8 weeks kind of. So then on 2nd of September, I was supposed to get discharged, but then again I had unbearable pain at night because during the day they were giving me counseling that you should take, either we are going to refurbish your uterus or we are going to remove it. So it is the decision is entirely dependent on you what you want to do, because you are not married, you do not have kids, or otherwise you can you can, I said we can freeze my eggs, but that time I was not aware that my tubes are damaged. So then I've been asked, then they have put me in ICU, and pain was not getting
Sorry to interrupt,
subsided.
Sonam.
Then they had teased some, I
The
think,
connection seems to be somewhat poor. It's flagging. I'm sorry to interrupt, but the correction seems to be somewhat poor. It's flagging. Thank you for what you've shared so far. We have questions from the audience, and I would like to direct them to Dr. Rahul Gajbhir. So through the discussions we've had so far, from what the clinician said and also what Sonam and Prachi have said, we've had occasion to think about risk factors and history and so on. So Dr. Gajbhir, what are the known risk factors for endometriosis and how can they be addressed? And tell us a little bit about the policy and the guidelines in place for endometriosis diagnosis, care, and so on.
So thank you, Josula, for bringing me here after almost 45 minutes. That's how the research is given a list parity in the country as well as globally. So now, specific to your question about the risk factors. So there are no risk factors if the age at menarche less than 12 years, a girl having age at menarche less than 12 years, yes, she's known to have risk of endometriosis. Women having short menstrual cycle, less than 24 days, 26 days, they are at a risk of developing endometriosis. Then, so these are the established risk factors. Then there are nulliparity, then then there are other factors such as environmental pollutants like dioxin, or there is a intrauterine exposure to the diethylstilbestrol. So these are the established risk factors, but there are more risk factors which are being investigated. So the several epidemiological studies like lifestyle risk factors, history of smoking, or consumption of caffeine or alcohol, or regular exercise, the use of oral contraceptives gives a protection. So if there is a multi-para woman, then there is a decreased risk of endometriosis. So that sort of the epidemiological data is evolving now for the risk of endometriosis. In terms of the policies at the moment, very little attention is paid on the public health policies for endometriosis. With the support from the World Endometriosis Society and the International Committee for Monitoring the Assisted Reproductive Techniques, ICMAT, we are now working with WHO to develop the policy guidelines on endometriosis and trying to identify what are the key research gaps. So that paper probably will be available by next year. Currently, we have little attention paid on endometriosis policy in the country as well as globally.
Thank you. We have a question from an attendee. The attendee says, the experiences being shared by the panelists about the health system sensitivity, while specific to endometriosis, are also similar and common to other reproductive conditions that women experience. The refusal to listen to women and being dismissive is fairly common. So she's touched upon the stigmatization and the normalization of the symptoms of endometriosis and other reproductive disorders. And more so, women are from marginalized communities. What suggestions does the panel have to address this issue of sensitivity to women and being able to help them in a timely manner? Anyone from the panel, please?
So it's right, many a times this happens, but that depends upon the which facility you are going. No doctor is, don't think that the doctors are not sensitive. They are very sensitive and might be more sensitive than you when they are treating patient, especially when they are an obstetrician or a gynecologist who are dealing day in, day out with two lives, not a one life. So these are the things which are, of course, we all want to hear with the patient, everything about them, but the time is always a constraint. If I'm sitting in a government hospital, seeing a patient, 100 patients in a OPD, which I had to finish in supposedly in 3 hours time. So of course, then the time will be less. That will be only a 5 minutes. But if it is a private institute or a private clinic, then of course the time will be more. Because every patient wants a time and the population is exploding like anything. And you have to cater all the patients with all the according to their need. And this disease, endometriosis disease, especially needs a multidisciplinary approach because it needs a psychological support. As especially Sonam and both Prachi has said, The problem is this: the disease treatment depends upon the age, fertility, the complaint with which they are coming. And you see, the ultimate treatment is that their hormones should be suppressed. That means you take out the ovary, you take out the uterus, everything will subside. But you cannot do these things when it is between the age of 50 to 35 years of age, because at that time they need to conceive. Somebody in the chat box told that the doctor asked her to go for a conception, go for a marriage. There is a reason for telling the doctor to get married, because as the disease prolongs, the chances of getting tube and ovary damage increases. So earlier you conceive, and that is the duration when the hormones are suppressed for in favor of your endometriosis. That is a very good time period. It is our social status. We are having a delayed marriage, environmental pollution, right? These are the two very important factors which are increasing day by day and which are increasing the incidence of endometriosis, right? So sensitivity is there. And nowadays a Google Baba is there. So everybody comes with all the information, what not is there with the patients. They don't trust. The problem between the doctor and the patient, trust is not there, because you have all type of things available. If you are not satisfied with me, you will go to some other. And then you will go, try to stick to one or two doctors. That will be very good, with which you are satisfied. Give a full trust to them. And then once your rapport will develop with your doctor, you will improve upon, because the trust pays a lot, right? So that is the thing which is needed. Many of the these type of diseases needs a good time for a patient, and also a psychological support, family support, which is needed. You see, none of the drug is there that can completely 100% relieve of your all problem with the endometriosis. This I am sure, and all the panelists would agree with me, because this is an invasive disease, but this is not cancer. Cancer may you can remove the things, but here we cannot remove the things. And if we are going to remove your ovary, what will happen? Your estrogen is not there. Then you will say everything is going, my heart is weakening, my this thing is weakening. So doctor also has to stabilize between the things. So everybody has to take the decision in consultation. It's not only the female which is water. It is the husband's life which is also at stake, because the marital disharmony is there if you are married. Social pressure is there because everybody wants a child. This is our social. It is not a disease of a single person. Although sufferer is the one most, that is the patient. But if she's married, everybody around is there. So we need to treat the things in total. That needs a lot, because first 2-3 visit, always it is the patient comes, then start husband coming, then the mother-in-law starts coming. So we need time for all of them. That is the thing which is needed for this disease.
Thank you, Dr. Nigam. Prachi had raised her hand, so I'm going to ask her to speak, but I just want to say that you've brought up some very important points, and we have a few questions that I'd like to introduce here. So I'll just ask the question and then we'll move to Prachi. So considering, as you said, and as other panelists have said too, that endometriosis is not a sharply demarcated condition. It's not easily manageable. It's not limited in time and space. It's not localized so that you can remove it and be done with it. And it has a pervasive effect on the lives of women and everyone associated with women, which means everyone. And we're talking, when we keep talking about the reproductive phase, it's also arguably the most productive phase of a person's life that is so adversely affected. So in addition to the course of medication and other therapeutic procedures that you have alluded to, our lifestyle changes and allied alternative and complementary therapies part of the solution. We have a question from the audience. I'll read that out. Are there some solutions provided from the traditional systems of medicine? And if there have been some solutions, have there been efforts to study and integrate them? So I'd like to ask what the women with endometriosis have sought in the past and what they advise their fellow sufferers of endometriosis to seek, and also then what clinicians and researchers observe and advise. But I'll move to Prachi first. Prachi, please.
Thank you, JK. I'm just going to speak on behalf of everyone who has been diagnosed with endometriosis. And I agree with Dr. Nigam that the burden even doctors have to deal with is immense and humongous. One thing that probably we can draw from what has started working for the cancer movement is that people living with cancer are really coming out as strong advocates now. And the psychosocial support, the sort of empathy that we are talking about, it is all accepted that a doctor can only engage with a patient for a limited duration, right? And because there is a queue, there's a lineup, and everyone wants the doctor's time. But I guess here there is a possibility, an opportunity to engage, say, people living with endometriosis champions as somebody who can support the whole process, not clinically, not scientifically, but can be there. And even for 10 minutes, if they can talk to the patient and tell them there will be pain, there will be a lot of suffering that will come with it, but you will emerge as a healthier human being. And it is not just for you to, be in the societal setup, get married, or be able to conceive. It is for your own health. And I honestly, if someone would have told me that it was for my own health, rather than telling me that you could conceive and you could go for family planning, and if you delay it, you won't be able to do it, I would have made a better decision at that time. Because when I realized that it is for myself, for my own good, and how in the next 2-3 years it will affect my monthly cycle and the pain that I'm bearing, and if I get operated, for example, my pain might subside and I will come back to my routine life, I would have probably taken a better decision. But since there was a lot of pressure, and it so happens with patients, when there is pressure, you just misperform. You don't perform in your best ability, and I think that happens with all of us. So I think it's important for the community that is working around endometriosis to also recognize that patients as peers, as support groups, can really help take better decisions for other patients.
Thank you, Prachi.
Gajbhai,
We see Dr. Gajbhai's hand. So, Dr. Rahul.
So in continuation to what Prachi said, and I do agree with Sonam as well, their concerns about the receiving the appropriate treatment for endometriosis and the diagnosis as well. I think it would be a good idea to have the endometriosis patient support groups in the country, and which can also be linked with the endometriosis experts as well as the researchers, so that the patients, they get the appropriate advice and the appropriate care from the experts, and also the researchers can address the important research gaps through the well characterized the clinical information and the clinical material. So I think it's high time to start the endometriosis support group in the country. In the Western world, we have several endometriosis support groups working, and majority of the women, they are getting benefited from the experiences shared by the women who are living with endometriosis.
That is
Thank
a very
you.
good idea, Dr. Rahul, what he said. We should be having a good endometriosis support group, and actually the one patient can be a support for the other patient also. So, and it's there, and there is a big society in US and UK for the endometriosis, really big society, and they are doing a very good job.
Thank you, Dr. Nigam. Dr. Gajbhai, I have one question that during this discussion, what we found is that there is a lot of psychological impact because of endometriosis on women. We would like you to tell us what is the public health implications of endometriosis, and also what is the burden of this disease globally and in India, and how much is known about this disease in our country?
Thank you, Prachi, for asking me this very important question. So I'll be summarizing most of the points from the earlier panelists. So we know that endometriosis affects approximately 1 in every 10 girl and women in the reproductive age. And we have estimated the total global burden of around 247 million cases in 2021, and 42 million cases in India. The women are suffering from endometriosis. 1 in every 3 women, they are infertile. 70% of the women with unexplained infertility, they have endometriosis. 30% of the adolescent girls with secondary dysmenorrhea, they have endometriosis. 60% of the women with chronic pelvic pain, they do suffer from endometriosis. And one must know that there is an average delay of around 7 to 10 years for the diagnosis of endometriosis. This is from the developed countries like UK and USA. In India, we do not know what is the average delay in diagnosis from the women suffering from the symptoms of endometriosis and having been diagnosed as endometriosis. There is no permanent cure for endometriosis, and the women, they have to live lifelong with this morbidity. Endometriosis has significant social and economic implications. There are studies conducted in US where they have shown that the global burden could be around $80 billion per year, which is equivalent to other chronic disorders like diabetes mellitus, Crohn's disease, or the rheumatoid arthritis. But the kind of attention which the other disorders like diabetes and the rheumatoid arthritis have received in terms of the clinical care as well as research, endometriosis has not been receiving that much of care from the policymakers. It can also decrease the quality of life due to severe pain, fatigue, depression, anxiety, and also because of the infertility. So there have been several public health implications. There is a reduced quality of life. Most of these girls or the women, they are absent from their workplace or in the schools, and which will affect their career growth and also negatively affect their personal and the family life. There is a higher burden of infertility, chronic pelvic pain, which is leading to the significant morbidity in the country as well as globally. Recent research has shown that there is an increased risk of cardiovascular disease, asthma, and the autoimmune disorders. In our recently conducted study, we observed the comorbidity of thyroid associated with Indian women with endometriosis. So there is a increased morbidity of other autoimmune disorders. There is one study published from India, from the Christian Medical College, Vellore, where they have shown that endometriosis is found to be associated with coexistent clear cell and the endometrioid carcinoma of the ovary. However, this has to be further investigated from the prospective studies, but epidemiological evidence suggests that women with endometriosis, they are at a higher risk of clear cell and the endometrioid type of ovarian cancer, breast cancer, melanoma, but this has to be investigated at a large scale. There has been reports of recurrence of endometriosis. Most of the women, they undergo several laparoscopic surgeries, and I'm sure Dr. Das Mahapatra will agree with me that this recurrent endometriosis adds on a lot of burden, economic burden, social burden, mental health is disturbed on the women living with endometriosis. So I think because of these reasons, as a public health and a clinical researcher, I think endometriosis is a global public health burden, and we all need to work together to address this problem.
Thank you, Dr. Rahul. Dr. Das Mahapatra, to carry on with what Dr. Rahul has said, we would like to know, like, what needs to be done in India to promote research on endometriosis and also to raise awareness among the women about the disease.
See, the things which we are carrying out, I can tell you now, we are actually going to the different schools, either in person or through the website or through the online survey. We are talking to the girls who are studying class 11 and class 12 with the permission of the headmistress. And we are sending the questionnaire to them. So we are being able to find out who are at risk of having endometriosis or maybe having already endometriosis. And we are suggesting them you should go and consult the gynecologist. There are two problems we are facing. Number one, it's not a problem with the girls, it's a problem with the headmistress, the head of the institutions. They are thinking we are there to advertise ourselves, number one. Number two, parents are also not eager to listen to us. See, so awareness should come from the very young age. It's not that the doctors, and I know their doctors are also lacking in awareness, because we tend to see prescriptions from even from the big cities, that the patients had symptoms of endometriosis, but she was treated for something else. So endometriosis still is not aware by the clinicians, by the patients, and by the society. So awareness means we have to conduct many awareness meetings with the schools, with the general public, and also with the clinicians. You see, since we established our endometriosis society, many societies are now conducting workshops on endometriosis. but are they being able to perfuse the treatment protocol? Are they being able to make the doctors aware of the disease? Are they being able to conduct any kind of workshops which will be relevant for the teaching purposes of the doctors? That is a big question. Superficial things are to be forgotten. We have to go deep into this subject. And as you know, the two patients, Prachi and the other lady, said that doctors are not listening doctors. The doctors have to be listening doctors. That means we need to have a special clinics for endometriosis. Any suspected, like we have cancer, breast cancer clinics, we have colorectal cancer clinic, we have diabetic clinic, all different clinics. So we need to have a special clinic so that the patients can go or maybe refer to their clinics. And the doctor should be enough to listen to the patients and then, make them aware. Support group is very important. Unfortunately, what is happening, one thing we have to remember, the well-meaning friends could be dangerous. I find that some support, I refer to patient to the support group, and they were more misinformed rather than giving the actual facts. The fact is that support groups, function of the support group is to give not only mental but a physical support, and also by support from other, by referring to as best doctor or best center. The research part, what I have realized, the patients are so much frustrated that they do not want to be involved in the research also. Yesterday, I approached one patient that, can I correct your blood sample? She gave the history correctly, but when the doctors went to correct the blood sample, she refused. She said, no. I cannot sign that consent form which says that they will do this test, they'll do this test. My husband said my wife's blood is precious blood, so I do not want to give 10 cc of blood. See, everybody has to be involved with this, not only the doctors, not only the support group, not only the researchers, the patients, everybody has to think that this is a very serious problem and we should work together. That is very important. Somebody mentioned about the society in the states, but see, they have no problem with money. But we have definitely problem with money. I had written to the health department of Government of India thrice to reduce the tax on the drugs for endometriosis. There was unfortunately no reply at all. There was no reply from the health department. They forget about whether they are going to waive the tax or not, that is a different issue. But at least they should have responded to my appeal. That yes, I have received, this is under consideration or we cannot consider this. But in the Western world, if you go to Holland, there is no tax on endometriosis drugs. So because the patient has to live for long with these drugs, think about the cost of the medicines. It is very costly medicines. And they have to keep on taking it. So who is paying for it? The patient, if she is a working lady, husband, family members. Somebody has to pay for it. Our government doesn't pay any medicine price. We started in West Bengal, government said we'll give it free, but it is not freely available. Any expensive drug you have to buy from your pocket. So these are things we have to consider.
Thank you, Dr. Das Mahapatra. You have raised some relevant points here in terms of policy, but we'll discuss all this now. But we have Prachi raising her hand. So Prachi, please go ahead.
Just one input here, and also this relates to what Dr. Das Mahapatra was mentioning. I think in terms of prioritizing research in endometriosis, if something that really puts on table the benefits of shared decision making, and we have been talking about it for quite some time for people living with MLTCs and people living with NCDs, is there is from the developed world, there is a sort of a precedence that says that when patients are explained the processes of treatment and the options that they have at hand, the outcomes, the treatment outcomes are improved because the patients feel involved in the decision-making process rather than they being told that this is best for you. Why can't they get the options that are there? Say a surgery, say if you have to live with it, this is how your life is going to be. If you want to, for example, take short-term steps, then go ahead and conceive very quickly. 2-3 options given to them. And then I know this is a little time consuming even for the healthcare professional, but at the end of it, I feel what will emerge is what the healthcare professional is wanting to do with the patient and what the healthcare professional feels is correct for the patient. It's just that once the patient feels involved, the decision will be quick, and throughout the journey, the mental stress will also be less. Rather than being imposed with a decision, the patient will feel that this was a decision that I took. So probably shared decision making, and how can that improve outcomes when it comes to treating endometriosis might really help.
Thank you, Prachi. The question that we had was some advice from all the panelists. We wanted to know that there are various stakeholders, as you have emphasized. It's not just the woman who has endometriosis, and it's not just her professional life and personal life and her social life. It's the family, the community beyond the family, her colleagues, practitioners, professional bodies, researchers, health system actors, governments. So the question is, what is required for communities beyond the family to support a space for the promotion of health of women with endometriosis? We've had many questions, in fact, from the beginning of this discussion itself, from people asking what they can do to help. What can a husband, what can a partner do to help a woman who is living with endometriosis? What can families do? We've had some of these answers, but any more insights on what these various stakeholders can do? Welcome. So anyone in the panel, I think Dr. Nigam has not spoken for a little while, and I'd like to ask Sonam also, she hasn't spoken for a little while. So please begin, Dr. Nigam.
Okay, so we need to help out the patient with the support from the family, that is the husband and the mother-in-law, whatever it is. So we need to call them and talk to them. What is the treatment or the future course of action for her disease? Because 3 things are very important: her day-to-day life, her future reproductive profile, and the family marital harmony. That is the 3 things which are very much needed in a reproductive age group, female or any female, regarding the sexuality also. So we need to talk to husband, and we need to tell him what are the problems which he can face and how much we are able as a doctor to solve it out in the form of medication or any surgical management. And during her work loss days, when the pain is a lot, we are giving her medication. So how that has to be treated. And what somebody asked about the traditional system of medicine. Although we are not using much of the Unani or the homeopathic drugs, and I don't have an experience of it, but as such, there is not much treatment. Yes, meditation and the yoga has got a role in all the diseases. So that has to be practiced by the female, and family has to help them. Psychological help, that is very much, that we are with you, that has to be told, that you have to give continuous support to her, that there is no problem. Suppose if any female is not able to conceive because of the infertility, we have an option of IVF. Yes, it is, but it might not be successful. Then we have to give idea, and we have to tell the family also. The way we want to counsel them, we have to judge the scenario of the family and her social circumstances. And in that way, we have to tell the family that yes, this girl might be depressed, that she is not able to give birth to a child, but that is not the end of the life. The most important thing for any person is the quality of life. The one most important thing, you are suffering from any disease, the quality of the life is the most important thing, and we should be targeting on that by any of our treatments.
Thank you. Sonam, would you like to weigh in? Sonam is muted. So we'll move
Yeah.
on. Okay, she's not.
No, no, I'm not muted now. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, the only thing I want to say that it is a very cost-effective medication, the entire process, and my uterus has been removed. People judge you too much. When you want to take this decision, I could have taken this decision at the age of 35, but just because I was not married, I also have this social taboo that you have to get married, you need to get conceived, and all this education is very important right from the school. That like all these doctors are saying, like about the sanitary pad also, people used to use, there are many things. It's a matter of hygiene also. There are too many things involved right from the beginning, right from the school. It Girls should be educated properly in a right and a corrective manner.
Yeah, thank you, Sonam.
And like doctor said, like doctor said about the medicine, you take this medicine, your pain will be relieved, and after it keeps on increasing day by day. Eventually, there is no, every person has it varies from person to person. Every individual gets a different kind of symptoms.
Yeah, thank you for that.
Thank you, Sonam. We have only like 10 minutes to go. So just at the end, we would like to ask the panelists about the role of various stakeholders, how they can play to improve the health and well-being of women with endometriosis, or promoting early diagnosis and treatment. What role health system actors can play, what role practitioners can play, professional bodies, individual and family and friends. So we'll start with Dr. Gajbhir.
So I think there is an urgent need to address the gap for endometriosis research and need to do the collaborative work between the patients, laparoscopic surgeons, the general practitioners, the researchers, public health specialists, and the social scientists also need to be bringing into this enigmatic disorder management point of view. The patient support groups or patient support group also need to be established. The program managers need to be sensitized on including the endometriosis related infertility, especially in the maternal health program of the government of India. And also the organizations like Endometriosis Society India or a FOXY, they can come out with developing the national guidelines for the early diagnosis of endometriosis and also the treatment of endometriosis. Currently, we do not have the guidelines for diagnosis and management of endometriosis. We also need to have the awareness program. The school teachers and the education department, they need to be sensitized on having the educational program. In New Zealand, there is a program called as ME program, which is very effective, which addresses the burden of endometriosis in adolescent girls. So I think the raising awareness of endometriosis, collaborating with several stakeholders and strengthening the capacity of the health system would be a priority. There are very limited laparoscopic surgeons available in the rural and the tribal areas, and therefore on a priority, we should have the training of all the gynecologists who are posted in the district hospitals or the sub-district hospital level. At least they should be able to diagnose the endometriosis based on the symptoms as well as the ultrasound, and that's how they can refer these girls or women timely into the tertiary care hospitals so that they receive the appropriate treatment. And finally, I think the advocating for the health policies that will ensure the access to at least a minimum level of treatment and support for the patient with endometriosis would be a priority in this country.
There are a few patients also here. I would just like to add on that whatever doctor has said, it is absolutely right that we need to have a support from the healthcare in the form of the good centers and availability of the treatment and standardization of the treatment. But you need to individualize the treatment, and the laparoscopy is not the only thing which has to be done, because this is the one thing which has to be used for a diagnosis as well as treatment. Just for making a diagnosis, we should not be putting up the scope inside the uterus, because it increases the chances of many more things. So we should be deciding upon the surgery very critically. because there are not a single factor which is there, and just for a diagnosis endoscopy you should not be going for it. It should be in total the age and your requirement and the lesions which are there, and how much treatment, what time, what are we thinking, are we taking you for infertility or for the pain or for the masses, that all things have to be seen, and what is the main pathology. Regarding other things which I would like to say, that although it is said to be a disease of the higher socioeconomic status, but yes, because of the changing lifestyle practices, it is increasing in the lower strata also. So as for any other disease, we need to have a help and a good involvement of a non-governmental organization like you or George Institute, and making the support system, because it's not only the government which can only do, it's the FOXI, our society, the NGOs like you can make one group and help it out to make a group for this disease, because millions of women are suffering, so that we can support these females who are not able to afford. Thank you.
Dr. Nigam, we'd like to ask Dr. Das Mahapatra to talk to us a little bit, and we know he has a slide that encapsulates.
Okay, I have sent the slides to you. Can you exhibit from there, or you want me to show the slides?
No, we haven't received Dr. Das Mahapatra, sorry. So could you please share the slide here? You're muted. Sir, you are muted, so if you could unmute yourself.
Slide. Give me 1 minute, please.
Preeti, I will present. The slide is up now on the screen.
Yeah. Now, like rest of the world, the disease used to be called as affecting the sophisticated women. When we were students, we were taught endometriosis in our gynecology classes, that this disease is only found in American women who are living a very sophisticated life. But presently, what we find in India, that it is spread all over the status of the women. Even in Jungle Mall, women in Jungle Mall, from Sundarban to remote villages, we find diseases. The problem is finding disease in remote villages, that the diagnosis is very delayed, because they believe the theory of grandmother. Hey, Aschana, slide Aschana.
You're muted. Please unmute. Dr. Das Mahapatra, please unmute.
In 2004, we estimated that there were 26 million. Now in 2020, we estimated 30 million. The grandmother's guidance is taken as the words from the horse's mouth. That was a misguidance. Incidence spreads from menarche to menopause. You see, one thing we have to remember, because of the change of society, the periods are coming early. When we were young gynecologists, we used to see the menarche between age 14 to 16. Now it is coming early. So early menarche means the estrogen surge, the hormone which is believed to be the causative factor of the disease, is coming early to the system of women at the young age. And it is also because the women are having very delayed menopause. So the estrogen is also working till past menopause. So the disease is now spread from menarche to the menopause. Imaging technique like ultrasonography is available, but awareness is far away. This is not only the clinicians. Think about the sonologist. 50 to 100 patients are waiting to be sonography to be done. So they hurry and they very quickly, and all the patients are waiting with the full bladder. So everybody is requesting to get the early scan. So very little time is spent for each patient to diagnosis, to make the diagnosis of endometriosis. That is very important. PCO, as I mentioned earlier, that PCO is very common nowadays. About 1/3 of the adolescent girls get the PCO, but please do not mix with PCO with endometriosis. PCO's features picked up by ultrasonography with pain is nothing but endometriosis. It cannot be PCOS. We have formed this society in 2004 with the help of Rahul Gajpee, Dr. B.N. Chakraborty. Initially, we started this society after I coming back from London, where the first World Endometriosis Society meeting was held. And then the sad news is that we still is unable to get the enough membership. We have about 500 plus, whereas the PCO member society has 1,500 plus. I do not know why this lack of involvement. Clinicians talking about it, but are they doing enough? In the villages, in the remote places, we have to let the people know, not only the gynecologist, but also the sonologist, whoever there, and the general public, that this is a disease which is actually coming and it is affecting almost 1/3 of the women in the world. So we have to be very careful. That is very important. And the research is still hospitals don't have a specialty unit for endometriosis. As doctor was saying that we are inundated with patients. We hardly get any time to talk to the patients. But for endometriosis, we have to be a listening doctor. You have to talk to the patients for half an hour to 45 minutes. Where do you get this time? Unless you have a special unit. And a unit means not only by Dr. Gajpee or Dr. Das Mahapatra. We need to have thousands of Dr. Das Mahapatras and Dr. Rahul Gajpee. So they need to be trained, and that training should be organized. And then the other thing is that, and the research work is still lacking. We do not have any support group. It is nice to form a support group by anybody in the society. Support group means real support group, not to scare the patients. That is very important. Support means you have to support mentally, give mental support. Economic support we cannot promise, but I think, as I said, that we should approach the government of India to reduce the tax on the drugs so that they can get some benefit, because this is going to be a long-term medical treatment. Surgery, I think why I should mention here, the surgery is being done by most of the gynecologists, but what the type of surgery they do, I call it as touch and go. Means complete surgery is a very difficult procedure, and that can only be done by the people who are experienced in doing so. So that is why the many patients are having multiple surgeries, 3, 4, 5 surgeries. That is not enough. And you must remember that removing the uterus and the ovaries is not the solution. You have to remove all the disease areas, otherwise there will be persistent of pain even after removal of uterus and ovaries in about 5 to 10% cases.
Thank you, Dr. Das Mahapatra. We have actually run out of time, though we have not by any means run out of interest. I would like to thank all the panelists. I'm just going to name all the panelists once again. just in case anyone has forgotten about them in these 1.5 hours. We have had Professor Aruna Nigam, Dr. Pramitesh Das Mahapatra, Dr. Rahul Gajbhiye, Ms. Preeti Kathuria, and Ms. Sonam Ramanna. Thank you all for being here. I'd like to summarize super fast what we've learned in this very, very informative session. We have learned what endometriosis is and how it shows itself. And we've learned that it's debilitating and invasive and affects up to 1/5 of girls and women in the reproductive, productive phase of their lives, with devastating impact not only on them, the patients, but also on the rest of society. And we've learned that based on the nature of the disease and the fact that it is not at all demarcated, that it's pervasive physically, mentally, and socially, it requires a lot of, it requires many sectors to come together to address it. And we have noted with sadness the gaps in all those many sectors. The fact that it takes, that it's a women's disease biologically, although it is society's disease socially. We realize that it takes a long time for people to acknowledge it, speak about it, and the silences are supported, facilitated by social pressures and by gatekeepers such as school teachers, headmasters and headmistresses, and families themselves, that health system actors may not be well equipped enough to understand, identify quickly, and relieve the suffering of people. We have understood a little bit about the risk factors and know now how to act soon. We've understood that the diseases that endometriosis is easily confused with are many, and that we have a few flags such as pain and the timing of the pain to take us quickly towards diagnosis of endometriosis and thereafter some support for the women suffering from it. And many gaps in policy, research, and how work is being done to bridge those gaps, and we and the kind of support that women require. So what all of us can do right now, once we leave this webinar, is to become more aware, to spread that awareness, and to break down the silences, to enhance the discourse on endometriosis, and to provide stigma-free support to women, girls and women suffering from endometriosis, to facilitate conversations and develop support groups, whether they're formal support groups which are required, and also be the support groups for the people around us. Thank you very much for your attendance. Just before we leave, I'd like to use this opportunity to speak a little bit about the George Institute, which, as Dr. Nigam said, is one key player in improving women's health in the future, we hope. So we have an ongoing study at the George Institute on endometriosis. The study is titled Women's Experiences of Living with Endometriosis and Seeking Medical Treatment in India. This study is being conducted in the NCR region, that's a National Capital Region around Delhi. And the aim of the study, the immediate output that we are hoping for is to develop a broader program of endometriosis research, in which we have the support of our panelists, to be sure, and now also of everyone who's attended this seminar. And we want finally to contribute to early diagnosis and improved health and well-being outcomes for all women suffering with endometriosis in India and then beyond. Another thing that is happening in the George Institute Women's Health Program is that we have a podcast which will reach all your ears very soon. So it's a podcast on sustainable menstrual hygiene management, and it's in 2 episodes, the first of which will be released on December 15th, and the second shortly thereafter, a week or so thereafter. We will circulate this widely, but you have got early information on this. So please do listen to our podcasts and keep supporting our institute as you have. Thank you very much for this very informative discussion, and let's hope we move on to actually implement many of the tips that we've got from this discussion. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Hey.